relations with Iran, specifically whether to decertify the agreement in 2015 under which Iran froze its nuclear program in return for the lifting of sanctions. Here's what he had to say about the deal at the UN General Assembly last month.
The Iran deal was one of the worst and most one-sided transactions the United States has ever entered into. Frankly, that deal is an embarrassment to the United States, and I don't think you've heard the last of it, believe me.
Well, we believe him on that. Kian Zandaya is a fund manager who invests in Iran. I asked him how worried he is that US sanctions could be reimposed.
If you go back, the certification process is based on legislation which was passed in the US in 2015, where every 90 days he has to recertify whether to keep sanctions waived off Iran or not. Since coming into office twice, he has certified this, but it's likely that on this occasion he will not. Now, what will happen from there is that Congress has 60 days to decide what to do with Iran, and there are three potential routes. One is they do nothing, in which sanctions stay as they are, relieved for Iran. One is that they choose to reimpose sanctions, which at the moment seems a low probability event, given that the Europeans and the other parties to the deal are lobbying quite aggressively to stop this from happening. And the positive scenario is that they actually pass legislation to stop this certification process, effectively preventing Trump from having to certify in the future, and again, keeping Iran in a situation where sanctions are relieved.
And if they do that third case scenario, as it were, it means every 90 days he hasn't got to have this job to do, as it were, and so it kind of it takes it off his agenda, and therefore he's not in that position anymore where he's doing something he said he wouldn't do, as it were. You've invested in Iran in the last couple of years since sanctions were lifted. Tell us about what's changed.
Sure. Well, if you can look at it from a domestic perspective and non-Iranian perspective. Domestic, if you look at what's happened and what was already in place, there were a lot of protections already in place for foreign investors looking to invest in the market. One example is an act called FIPA, it's Foreign Investor Protection Act. This basically is a government guarantee for investors that their capital will be guaranteed from the government and can be given back if they were to return back. The central bank, for example, has been given a lot of leeway to reform the banking sector, to have it in line with international standards. The stock market regulator is mandating that all listed companies be in line with IFRS, international financial reporting, accounting standards. So a lot of domestic work is happening to make it easier for foreign investors to be able to access the market.
And in terms of international companies, I mean, companies like Boeing are huge beneficiaries of this lifting of sanctions. I mean, Boeing and Airbus replacing an enormous fleet of aeroplanes. But there's other things like Total's in there, Shell is in there with the oil industry. There's a lot going on, isn't there?
Sure. I mean, if you look at what Iran is, it's a population of 80 million. 65% of that is under the age of 35. It's an educated population. You have GDP per capita on par with above China, Brazil. So it's a real burgeoning economy and has a growing middle class. So it's an opportunity which, for a lot of companies, it's the last area within the world which is untapped, where it's a real growth potential.
Well, he certainly thinks so, that's for sure. Kian Zandaya, who is a fund manager based in London, but spends a lot of his time in Iran, as you could tell from that conversation. So looking at markets, just to say that Japan, I'm going to double check the numbers. Japan's had a really good day today, the best day since, the highest level for the Nikkei 225 since 1996. So forgive me for this figure, we will fix that. We have a gremlin in the system, but elsewhere you can see in Asia a pretty robust recession, and that follows the US the night before, who can quickly show the States a record close again for the S&P 500. I'll show you the numbers in Business Live, and it's all to do with the Federal Reserve minutes. All that and more in Business Live with me and Ben in 40 minutes. See you then.